First of all, I would like to express my deep appreciation to all the honorable members, including my colleague Sri Jaswant Sinha, who was my distinguished predecessor, not immediate predecessor, but who had the record of presenting 6 budgets, including one which was interim budget when Chandrasekharji was Prime Minister from 1998 to 2002-03. And all other members who have made their very valuable contribution. Up to now, 24 honorable members spoke on the floor of the House, but as many as 114 have laid their statements on the floor of on the table of the House. If the normalcy could have prevailed, perhaps some of them could have made their observations to the benefit of all of us. Madam, when I stand before you and to this august House, I have no intention of scoring any debating point or any brownie point. I want to explain, as I did, to the best of my capabilities in the presentation of my budget and in response to the various observations made inside the House and outside the House, where I have responded to some. I will try to elaborate what prompted me to formulate the budget proposals in the context of the situation prevailing within the country and outside the country. Outside the country has some relevance, we cannot ignore it. Just few minutes ago I was accused that you are increasing the petrol and diesel prices. Most respectfully, I would like to submit, in the last 1 year, from June 2011, we have not increased the petrol and diesel prices even once. But the petrol and diesel prices are increasing. On the other hand, on June 2011, when we deregulated petrol, enhanced some price on diesel, kerosene and LPG, we sacrificed 49,000 crores of rupees in the form of taxation. Therefore, the energetic, articulate member of the ceremony, Akali Dol, I will most respectfully submit, it is not me, I don't have the capacity. I would have been glad if I had the capacity to control the world oil market. I have not increased. I did not have the privilege, please, I did not have the privilege which my distinguished colleague Jaswant Sinha ji had during the entire 6 years period of NDA regime. Petrol prices, petroleum crude prices varied from $12 per barrel to $32 per barrel, and throughout the year I had to buy $115 per barrel Brent petroleum crude which we use. We produce only 39 million tons of crude. We import more than 100 million tons. Petroleum Minister is here, perhaps 106, 110 million tons. That's the difference. One of the most important ingredients in the inflation basket is oil. 3 F's. food, fertilizer, fuel. Therefore, we shall have to place the budgetary proposals in the perspective of the situation which is prevailing around us. We are not living in isolation. We do not produce enough petrol and petroleum products in our country. We have to depend on import. Therefore, what happens in Middle East? It affects my fertilizer. Entire P and K I am to import. It is not indigenously available. If there is crisis in Libya, or if there is crisis in Syria, our farmers don't get P and K fertilizer. It affects us. We are not living in cocoon. It affects. When Europe, which accounts for 36% of my export, if there is a serious crisis, and if my exports come down, which results in enhanced current account deficit, I cannot but feel concerned about the developments of Eurozone. When I find throughout the year, except in the last 2 months, FII are going out, not because of my policy, but because of the hard fact their domestic requirements. Foreign financial institutions who invested in India, when they withdraw, their developments are surely matter of concern to us. We cannot ignore. We cannot ignore the fact, if there is slow recovery in Europe, poor and fragile recovery in USA, major economy of Japan struck by earthquake and nuclear accident, because from day one, Japan is an important contributor in our developmental process through ODA. Therefore, when I talk of international crisis, there is no need to trivialize it. We have to try to understand it in its proper perspective. I do appreciate your anxiety. And sometimes I wonder, perhaps you thought that this old man has a magic lamp or magic wand. He can address all the contradictory situations and bring out something which is acceptable to all of us. I am flattened. I feel proud when I see that this type of confidence is in me, but at the same time, I shall have to keep in mind the ground reality. The ground reality is, we do not have the clear absolute mandate. Yes, we have a mandate, but that mandate is limited. Carry others with you. Therefore, we shall have to carry others with you, us. Many of the decisions which we consider necessary, others may not share their perception, but simply I cannot brush aside their perception, however strenuous, time-consuming it may be. I shall have to carry others with us, because my ultimate objective is not to win a school debate, but to get things done through consensus, which will have more lasting impact And exactly, Madam Speaker, I am trying to do so. What prompted me to formulate the budget proposals, I am fully aware of. That we shall have to, in the context of uncertainty prevailing in the international and external environment, we shall have to work out a domestic demand-driven strategy which will help me to achieve higher GDP. I have indicated in my budget speech, I will elaborate on all those three objectives. I had primarily three objectives. I must come back to the path of higher growth trajectory. We were having growth 9.5% up to 2007-8, particularly in the previous 3 years. And perhaps for the first time, Jaswant Sinha has agreed that in the last 3 years, we had higher growth, inflation was modest and moderate, and also fiscal deficit was within the prudential management. But we had the crisis. I entirely agree with him, yes. I injected as a stimulus package of 1,86,000 crores of rupees in the interim budget, which I presented from here in February 2009 and subsequently in the full budget in July 2009. I did not roll back. I reduced the excise duty from 14% to 8%. I did not roll back. From 8% I went to 10%. From 10% I have gone to 12%, not 14%. Please remember, in the pre-crisis period, excise duty was 14%. Why I have increased the service tax? It was a broad consensus. Two other points which Jaswant Sinha and many others, including Mulayam Singh ji, our good friend Jagdambika Pal ji and many others, have referred to about the excise duty on jewelleries and CST. I will come little later on, including Mr. Harin Patel, who did a delegation along with Mr. Rupala and others. I will come to that little later on. But the short point which I am flagging at this stage, that there was a broad consensus that ultimately, when we want to have GST, we will have to align the taxes. There should be common tax for goods and services, which I am trying to do by having 12% service tax and 12% central excise duty. And at the next stage, there will be alignment with the state taxes, so that the avoidance of cascading effect and of a very high rate, when GST will be put into operation, smooth transition can take place. That was the rationality. Formulation of the negative list. Negative list, item-wise it is 17, but large number of sub-items are there. Apart from the negative list, there are exempted categories, where large number of the services are kept outside tax rate. Because we have kept, why we have done it 2 stages? Negative list, for which every time any alteration, any amendment, we shall have to come to the Parliament. Exempted category can be addressed by the amending the rules, which is within the executive power of the government. And when we will have GST, here the states have vital interests, and when I shall have to address their problems, I thought if I can keep a basket, if a separate group where their views can be accommodated, That's why I created this exempted category. Now coming to the main 3 points. How to achieve the domestic demand-driven growth, how to achieve fiscal consolidation, and how to achieve the moderation of inflation. Coming to the domestic demand-driven growth, what we are expected to do? We are to make investment in agriculture. We are to make investment in infrastructures. We are to make investment in the rural sectors. We are to inject money at the hands of the rural population. Please examine the budgetary proposals. I have made an attempt to address these 3 areas. You may say, Mr. Minister, what you have done is not adequate. Most respectfully, I will accept that yes, it is not adequate. If I could have provided 20 or 25% step up in agriculture, I would have been happiest person. And I take this opportunity, Madam Speaker, of congratulating my distinguished colleague, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, because for the first time, rice production in India has crossed 100 billion tons. And this appreciation is not coming from us alone. We are not mutually praising each other. This has been recognized by Mr. Robert S. Ziegler, Director General of Indian International Rice Research Institute, Manila. I quote him, "The most heartening aspect of India crossing the 100 million ton rice production mark is that a major contribution has been from Eastern India." And when I talked of extending green revolution to Eastern India and allocated a sum of 400 crores of rupees, somebody poo-pooed, what would happen? Something has happened. In the last Kharif, 7 million tons extra rice production has come from that area. And as a recognition of the further allocation, I have stepped up the allocation from 400 crores to 1,000 crores. And I do hope it would be possible to maintain this level of food production. I entirely agree. When we talk of the food security, the most important component of the food production, without food production, what security we can give? There is no country in the world who can feed 121 crore plus people. We will have to produce our own food grains. But that cannot be achieved merely by words. For that we require correct planning, effective investment, ensure the farmer's interest, give him the remunerative price, provide the extension service, and most important, which brought the green revolution in this country, good extension work and good research work. That's why I have emphasized to encourage our young scientists that there should be some competition. Apart from giving additional allocation to encourage the research and development to some of the most important and prestigious agricultural research institutions, which I have detailed in the budget, I am not going to repeat it. We have given 200 crores of rupees to encourage the scientists for innovation, for new research work, which can be of the path breaking. What we have done? Please look at the investments which we have made. Yes, I know there is a problem of Bidar. Somebody has referred to. Farmer suicides are taking place. Till now, despite the loan waiver of 65 to 70,000 crores of rupees in 2008. That's why I have provided under RKVY 300 crores to Bidar intensified irrigation development program to bring farming areas under protective irrigation. One of the important shortcomings is of the storing facilities. Every one of us have talked of storing facilities. Since 2009-10, we have already created 43 million tons of storing capacity. We are going to add 3 million tons more by 31st March 2012. 47. 47 million tons is the existing capacity. Within few days, additional 3 million tons are going to be added, and additional 12 million tons will be added by 31st March 2013 and 31st December 2013. The incentives which we have provided, including the viability gap funding, including the concession in ECB, including the support to ensure that the storing facilities are created. If we want to have the food security in true sense of the term, we shall have to produce enough, we shall have to procure enough, we shall have to store enough, we shall have to prevent the leakage and wastage, and we shall have to ensure that the public distribution systems, which will be the vehicle of implementing the Food Security Act, which is a legal and no doubt it is a daunting and challenging job, but the nation collectively, with the cooperation of all concerned, from this side of the house, from that other side of the house, and from all sides of the house, we shall have to implement it. We can do that. Much has been talked about the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. I agree that there is no two dispute, two opinion, that though basically it is wage earning scheme, demand driven wage earning scheme, it cannot be linked with the asset creation activities. I have no quarrel with that. But please do not forget, we passed the Minimum Wage Act in 1948, within 1 year of independence, before the drafting and adoption of the Constitution. Within 1 year of India's independence, Provisional Parliament passed three important acts. 1948 Industrial Resolution, 1948 Trade Union Act, 1948 Minimum Wage Act. But most of the states, this Minimum Wage Act could not be effectively implemented. At least Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme has ensured that today you cannot get a wage earner in the rural areas in less than whatever has been provided by this Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme as minimum wage. Yes, there are problems. In implementing any scheme, you will face the teething problems. Those teething problems are to be addressed. I do not deny that. But that does not mean the effectiveness of the scheme is not there. I entirely agree when somebody suggested that if we can implement it through the restoration of the water bodies, which long ago Mr. Chidambaram as Finance Minister announced this scheme, that Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme will have to be linked with the restoration of the water bodies, which will create durable assets and which will also provide substantial cash assets creation and irrigation benefit, fishing activities, and if it is a larger area, some sort of little bit local tourist activity. The allocation under RIDF has been enhanced to 20,000 crores of rupees, Rural Infrastructure Development Fund. Viability gap funding I have already mentioned to it. This is supporting the PPP in infrastructure, is an important instrument in attracting private investment into the sector. This year it has been decided to make irrigation, including dams, channels, embankments, terminal markets, common infrastructure in agricultural markets, soil testing laboratories, and capital investment in fertilizer sector eligible to have from viability gap funding arrangements. Investment in infrastructure, investment in irrigation, investment in the rural infrastructure, investment in agriculture, all leading towards strengthening the generation of the domestic demand, which will act as a fuel to attain the desired GDP growth. This is the reason why I have stepped up the allocation for AIBP from 14,000 to 14,242 crores. For drinking water, I have increased it. For rural sanitation, I have increased it substantially. I have also, apart from that, I am going to create a company 100% owned by government for irrigation and water resource finance company to raise the resources for the long-term and medium-term irrigation projects. Series of tax concessions I am not going to reel it out, which I have provided for the agricultural equipments, either in the customs duties or in the excise duties, including the warehousing facilities, interest subvention for farmers, when he will keep his produce in the warehouse, store it, he will get bank loan with interest subvention, so that he is not compelled to sell his produce at the throwaway price when the harvests take place. 6 months facilities have been extended to them. All these to strengthen the domestic demand, which will fuel our GDP growth, and to some extent, not fully, to some extent, it would insulate the economies from the adverse impact from external environment. Now, coming to the questions of whether we will be able to achieve the fiscal consolidation, whether we will be able to keep the fiscal deficit at the desired level. I do agree. Many of us sitting this side, that side, on the other side will say, Mr. Minister, your message should have been strong. Instead of saying 5.1 as fiscal deficit, you should have reduced it further, because already 4.8% has been achieved year before last as fiscal deficit. But I became pragmatic and little conservative. When I say that except on food items, except on food security, in all other areas, we shall have to peg the subsidy at the level of 2% of GDP, I mean it. Because, like many of you, particularly, of course, with Mr. Advani, though he is senior to me in age by 2-3 years perhaps, but I am senior to him in Parliament by 9 months. He came to Rajya Sabha in April 70, I came to Rajya Sabha in July 69. So perhaps I can claim a modest seniority, not in stature. He is of very high stature in seniority. Being all these years, I have seen what real financial crisis means. I have seen when our foreign exchange reserves come to the bottom, what the finance minister at that point of time, I may miss my sleep for few days, but he had to miss his sleep weeks together because hardly there was any foreign exchange. Hardly anybody was there to help India at that critical hour. And it was not in remote past. Please remember. Therefore, we cannot indulge in fiscal profligacy. It is a task which collectively we shall have to address. If somebody expects it is the job of the finance minister may come and go. In this country there has been no dearth of finance ministers. Quality-wise in this house, at least more than a dozen persons are present who can be better finance minister than me. That is not the issue. Issue is collectively we shall have to address certain issues. If the petrol prices go on like this, if it reaches $150 per barrel, if it reaches $200 per barrel, would the country be in a position to import petroleum products at all? We have to address it collectively. Therefore, budget is not the only exercise through which we can take decisions to correct the wrongs or to take the corrective appropriate decision to help the economy. But their cooperation of all concerns are required. And I think we have over the years built up that crisis. Again I am referring to a couple of years back, rather 2 decades back. From 1989, in no Lok Sabha election, no single party got the clear mandate from the electorate. No political party or group of political parties. Pre-election, coalition got clear mandate in favor of, in terms of absolute number, from 1989 onwards. 89, 91, 96, 98, 99, 2004, 2009. What does that mean? That every alternate year we should go for the general election. There will be no government. There will be constitutional crisis. Political establishments of this country, they recognize the significance and tried to work out a mechanism through which we have successfully, whether it is led by NDA, whether it is led by UPA 1 or by UPA 2, we have provided coalition government, despite contradictions, despite differences of views, despite divergence of approaches, because we do recognize as political institutions the way since yesterday's morning the House reacted to some of the remarks of a section of the civil societies. It speaks of the inherent strength of the House. I am appealing to that inherent strength of the House, that this is a serious economic crisis, we shall have to address it collectively. Some efforts are being made through the budgetary exercise, but much more efforts will have to be made through our collective efforts throughout the year. Because nobody can say what would be the outcome of it. I am candidly admitting, Madam Speaker, to my colleagues, that I wonder if the Eurozone crisis extends to a major economy in Europe, outside these four PIGS countries, Portugal, Ireland, Greece and Spain, what would happen? Any amount of bailout package by European banks or International Monetary Fund would not be able to resolve that crisis, and it would have its impact. We cannot deny that grim scenario. Therefore, we shall have to see what would be our contingent plan, how we could insulate ourselves. I am grateful to my colleague, Commerce Minister, that who has made serious efforts for diversification of our exports destination. As a result, despite poor growth, poor recovery, poor demand in Japan, USA, North America and Europe, which account for more than 60% of our export earnings earlier, we are down, but not substantially down so far the overall export performance is concerned. Jaswant Singh ji very correctly pointed out to me that how are you going to address the current account balance? Yes, we shall have to address it, but most respectfully I would like to submit that if you look at the numbers, one thing I can tell you very candidly and honestly, I have presented the number and I have not tried to provide any below the lines number. What is deficit? That is deficit. You are not to find out from small prints that whether certain other hidden figures are there. I have not done that. No, I am not meaning anything. That's your, don't do that. But what I am trying to do, that whatever I feel that this is, yes, I have candidly admit 32,000 crores has been the shortfall of direct taxes. Because of the low, poor profitability of the corporate sectors, including the oil company. I have requested my colleague, Petroleum Minister, to ask some experts to examine that after all the upstream oil companies should have earned some more profit when the crude prices are increasing, because I calculated $90 per barrel or the cost of the imported crude. They also calculated around that. But when they got $115 as consumer, I had to pay through the noses. But they should have made some profit. But that experts will look into it. Laymen like us cannot make any comment on it. Therefore, the numbers which I have given, x-raying it from all angles, I have tried to put the numbers in proper perspective. So we shall have to come back to the path of fiscal consolidation. The FRBM amendment which I have made, I have fixed the rolling target for 3 years of expenditure. Why? Because if I find that in any year we are not moving in the correct direction, we can have the BDR correction. That's why the 3 years target I have kept. And I would like to ensure that we adhere to it. Jaswant Sinha ji has stated that why I am not talking of austerity nowadays. Just few years ago, 2 years ago, I had the austerity. Many of my cabinet colleagues were extremely unhappy when I told them that you are to travel by the economy class. Many of my, and more than often it has happened that I used to travel in economy class and many of my colleagues in parliament used to travel in executive class, and sometimes I found them. Therefore, it is not that. These are the standard practice we do, and surely I will look into it that if there is any profligacy of the expenditure in any sections, I would like to control it. I like to, that is the job as finance minister in charge of the expenditure to ensure. And at least all my cabinet colleagues will bear with me that whenever they come to me, if some of them say good morning, my response is no money, Mr. Minister. Therefore you don't say, I don't say good morning. My response to good morning is no money. So we are trying to, it is not that we are not trying, but surely I do not want to place any panic button. So therefore we had to ensure that these things go on. Madam Speaker, I would also like to talk of the most important issues of the moderation of inflation. On the external sides of the inflationary pressure, like crude, certain metals, the volatility of international prices will affect us to some extent. How to absorb it, how to address it, as I mentioned, we shall have to collectively think of it. But last year, if you have noticed, Jaswant Sinhaji digged at me that I said that I have brought it down to 8%. Yes, I said that I have brought it down, food inflation, to 8%, because it reached as high as 20%. In February 2010, if it reached 22%, this is simply unacceptable. And therefore, when it comes to 8%, average 8% during the year 2011-12, and in the month of December, January, it becomes negative, definitely it is a satisfaction. But there are two aspects. One aspect is the excess liquidity which has been injected in the market through stimulus package by tight money policy resorted to Reserve Bank of India. Those have been substantially addressed and it is still being addressed. Though through CRR, additional liquidity has been released to the banks, but interest rates are still high. And when the next time of revision will come, surely Reserve Bank in consultation with the Finance Ministry will take the appropriate steps. But we are fully aware of the inflationary pressure. Only one advantage we are having, that is statistical, that last year we started with double digit. This year we have started with little less base. But that is no consolation. We shall have to address, and which I have done adequately in my budget proposal, by removing the supply constraints of agricultural products which cost substantial inflationary pressure, built up substantially inflationary pressure in the system. 60,000 pulse villages, oil pump program, fodder program, which are now all being converted into the various agricultural missions, oil seed villages, special program, thrust program, substantial quantum of dairy development with World Bank aided project. All these are aimed to improve the production, preservation of fruits, vegetables, enhancement of production of egg, milk, pulses, edible oil. Therefore, if we can address the supply constraints of the essential food agricultural commodities, and there has been a change in the consumption pattern, if we can address that, surely it would be possible to keep it at a moderate level. Of course, I am not claiming that I will go back to 3.5%. It will take some time. But in this given situation, if we are careful from the very beginning and the supply constraints we can remove, monetary policy and fiscal policy, move in close conjunctions, it would be possible to my mind, Madam Speaker, to address these issues. Now, couple of issues I would like to address. because I will have another opportunity of explaining in details when we will pass the finance bill. First thing about the central sales tax compensation to the states. It is not merely Bihar. I have just received the Deputy Chief Minister and Chairperson of the Empowered Committee of State Finance Ministers. I am just placing the facts for the consideration of the House. It was decided 2007-8 that CST will be brought down. First year from 4% to 3%, second year from 3% to 2%, third year from 2% to 1%, and fourth year from 1% to 0. That was the arrangement which was made in 2007-8 onwards. States were to accept certain obligations, center were to accept certain obligations. When 2009-10 came, then the issue came, because that was the financial crisis year, not unilateral decision of me as finance minister, but in consultation with the empowered committee of the state finance ministers, the then chairman, we decided that we will not bring it down further from 2% to 1%. It was a collective decision. And what it was agreed? That center will do, that they will withdraw the de-based concessional CST rate on purchase by government department and agencies from 2007-8 onwards. We have done that. Allow taxation on 333 identified intra-state services from 2007-8 onwards. Additional 44 items were to be added subsequently. The estimated revenue from 33 services was 3,480 crore in 2007-8, 4,750 crore in 2008-9, rupees 5,171 crore in 2009-10. All these 3 years I paid the compensation. Now the question came, yes, I raised this question, that I must see the light at the end of the tunnel. When we are going to have GST, unless we have a time frame, how long I can go on compensating? Because what was the idea? Idea was that state will also, tobacco, sugar, on which they will increase the VAT, so that the overall compensation is reduced. Now some of the states have increased the VAT, but their position is that, look, this is my inherent right. I can increase the VAT from 4% to 5%, 5% to 6%. You do not take into account while computing the central sales tax compensation. There I am suggesting, and I am suggesting while responding to their issues, that I have not closed my mind. I am ready to sit with them, and I will sit with them and work out a mechanism so that I can give them some compensation. But if I have that in mind, that this is the time frame, whatever it may be, some work my colleague Jaswant Sinha ji also is doing, and I hope by monsoon session, if he is in a position to give me the report of the constitution amendment and the bill which we have referred to, because he is also having interaction with the empowered committee of state finance ministers and other stakeholders. That is very much detailed. And if we can have that, whatever recommendation standing committee will give, I will give the deep consideration to that. And I will sit with the state finance ministers and their authorized forum of the Empowered Finance Committee, I will work out the mechanism through which we can ultimately reach the GST. It is not correct to say that nothing has been done. Common portal has been created, and through that common portal, filing of returns, receipts, deposit, payment has been simplified. GSTN is going to be, GST network is going to be in place shortly. These are the preliminary steps we have taken. And I do feel when we will get the basic legislation, because my anxiety is that after whatever form you recommend, after government considers that, it will require special majority in both the houses to get the constitution amendment passed. And that I am telling it candidly, we must come out of our mindset. If the mindset is that no, state will have the sovereign right to impose the sale tax and nobody should be allowed to come into that domain, then whole thing falls flat. As I am permitting that you will have the right to impose service tax, excise duty, center will like to have right to impose sales tax. That is the reason why constitution amendment is required, because today's constitution does not permit that. Unless it is being done, then further movement is stonewalled there. So we shall have to be ready. If we agree that yes, here we shall have to make a compromise, that yes, we will have the right. GST Council, what is there? Finance Minister and his deputy are the only two members. 28 states have their representatives. There is no veto power. Dispute settlement mechanism we can work out collectively. And when we are having open mind and there is a regular institution, I don't feel there is any difficulty. The last point in this respect, I would like to suggest that it is not our intention, days in and days out we are taught Sushmaji's brilliant Hindi, which I cannot imitate, that Sanghya Dhacha par prahar ho raha hai. I have no intention of attacking anything on federal structure. And if I say how from first Finance Commission to the 12th Finance Commission, the devolution has increased. First Finance Commission, the devolution was 1952 to 1957, share of income tax 55%, share of excise duty 40%. That was the total devolution. Today, 13th Finance Commission, devolution is 32% of the total revenue earning, including excise duty, including customs, including all, including service. That 41,000 crores of rupees, which I am additional resource mobilization making, and for which I have received huge gully. For that 41,000 crores will not be appropriated by me. 32% of that 41,000 crores will go to the states. They will also get a share, but none of them is sharing the gully and criticism which I am having it here outside the house. 10th Finance Commission, it was income tax 77.5, union excise duty 47.5. 11th Finance Commission 29.5, 12th Finance Commission 30.5, and 13th Finance Commission 32.32%. And please remember the base of the devolution. Between 12th and 13th Finance Commission, some of the states have got as higher devolution, as high as 159%, not all, but some of the states. These figures do not speak that we are encroaching. We are expanding. We are sharing. Even on the petroleum product. I have some figure. We receive, whenever a petroleum prices increase, we get huge criticism. But what is the actual position? Price without tax, I am taking one city, Delhi. Per litre of petrol, price will be 39 paisa. Per litre of diesel will be 33.51 paisa. Per litre of kerosene would be 14.12 paisa. Kerosene, there is hardly any tax. Central government doesn't have any tax. Some states have some tax. That is 4.8%. Center has no tax. But excise duty, customs duty and state VAT taken together comes to 26 rupee 55 paisa. You add 39 rupee with 26 rupees, then it becomes 65 rupees. I cannot tell the states you sacrifice almost half of these, because they will say, where will we get the money? But I had to have a haircut. Not a remote past, but in last June, as I mentioned earlier, 49,000 crores of revenue sacrifices I had to make. I could not make the recommendations of DTC implemented in this year's budget because I got the report, I think, 6th or 9th of March. Therefore, what I have incorporated from DTC, the original provisions of the bill which I introduced in the House, which was under the considerations of the Standing Committee, and whatever recommendations Standing Committee have made, I will examine it before we come to the House for its approval. But for the limited purpose of budget, I have accepted one tax rate for the personal income tax. Original recommendation was exemption up to 2 lakh, thereafter from 5 to 2 to 5, 10%, 5 to 10, 20% tax, 10% above 30%. That I have accepted. I have accepted GAR, General Avoidance, General Anti-Avoidance Rules, GAR. I did not have the privilege of examining the recommendations of the Standing Committee to incorporate in the finance bill, but surely I will examine and I will modify as and when it will be required. This is essentially an anti-avoidance measure. This House gave me the mandate in the debate of the black money, that not only to bring back black money stashed outside, take steps to prevent the generation of black money. GAR is one such. What we are saying? We are saying, sometimes we find that, we see that the investments are coming from no tax, zero tax or tax haven countries. I do not mind if the investment comes from the prospective investors who have their regular business. But when I find there is no establishment, there is no office, somebody is making huge investment, getting concession on capital gains tax, the address is address of a chartered accountant or address of a tax advisor or tax consultant. Should I not prevent that? We are trying to attempt the GAR. It is not made for harassment. It is not making harassing the honest taxpayers. But those who are taking advantage to avoid the taxes, we shall have to take action against them, because it is your mandate. This House, in an adjournment motion, told me that take appropriate steps to not only bring back black money stashed outside, but also to prevent generation of black money. That's why I am strengthening the transfer pricing mechanism. That's why I am adopting the AAP of direct taxes in toto. I will examine in the context of the recommendations of the Standing Finance Committee. Another point I would like to clarify, because of the lot of viewpoints have been expressed about the retrospective legislation in respect of taxation. Please correct me, there are many knowledgeable members. Hardly I find any finance bill where some retrospective legislation has not been made in respect of the taxation item with reference to the judgment of the court. In 1 year, a particular new section was added to the finance bill, not during my time or Mr. Chidambaram's time. One new section was added. I myself have done it. In 2008 I have done, 2009 I have done. What we want to achieve? We want to, Supreme Court told that you clarify the intention of the legislature about the determination of the tax, how tax regime should be there. Explain the intention of the legislature. Intention of the legislature will be from the day of legislation. It cannot be in between. Therefore, if the tax was enacted in 1961 or 1962, when I am giving the interpretation of legislation, it will be with reference to that day. But that does not mean that all the cases will be reopened for all these years from 1961 or 1962. There is another provision in the Income Tax Act which will prevail, where no tax case can be reopened beyond 6 years. So where is the apprehension that 20 years, 50 years old cases will be reopened? India is not a no-tax country. India has a determined tax rate, but it is not a tax haven. It is not a no-tax country. We have no intention of having it. What intention we have? You are not to pay double taxes. If you pay tax in your country of origin, you need not pay tax if we have the double taxation avoidance agreement with your country of origin. We are exactly explaining that position in respect of Vodafone case. It is not with any vindictive attitude, but I shall have to prevent my own right, otherwise there will be outflow from the treasury. Those who have similar cases accepted the interpretation of the department, paid the taxes. If I do not amend the law, if tomorrow they come and say that you are to return the taxes because I have paid the taxes, accepting your interpretation, now your interpretation has been nullified by Supreme Court, you have not made the necessary legislative corrections, you pay it back. Can any government accept that position? We are not going to have a tax haven. At the same time, we are not going to say that tax laws are arbitrary. Tax laws are transparent. It is firm, it is determined. The last point, Madam Speaker, I would like to suggest. I have received series of representations from various political leaders, various individuals, MPs, including my party colleagues, both in cabinet, outside cabinet, about the excise duty on the small jewelers. I have no intention of causing any harassment or disturbing that trade. Intention was very clear. All of them, all state governments, please remember, they are charging VAT on them. What I indicated that if you pay VAT, you can pay excise duty also. But as there has been lot of representations, I am considering it. The period which will be available now, between now and the passage of the finance bill, I will come out with an acceptable formulation. There are three angles. One is the requirement of PAN card for preparing ornaments of 2 lakhs. That issue is to be addressed. Excise duty, and in the form of realizing the excise duty, reintroduction of the inspection that has been concerned. And third area on which import duty, most respectfully I would like to submit that the quantum of gold import which is taking place, last year it was more than $46 billion, next to petroleum. Yes, there is a gold is a part of our culture, I admit. But at the same time, please remember, precious foreign exchange, if it is spent on importing dead assets like gold, it causes problem. Therefore, small jewelers, I understand their right. The question of the value PAN card, I understand, but surely not on the import duty on gold and platinum. Madam Speaker, I tried to address some of the issues pointed out by the honourable members. With these words, I commend the budget for the consideration of the honourable members.
Nothing else will go in record. Nothing else will go in record. I shall now put the demands for grants on account general for 2012-13.
Madam,
the
just
vote of the
one
House.
second, if you permit me.
Yes.
If you permit me, there is one issue on which I have also received some representations, but there are 2 angles. You know, last year I reduced the import duty on raw silk from 30% to 5%. It is mainly to protect the weavers, large number of weavers of the whole of India, because they were going to practically close their activities. But it has caused some problems to the sericulture farmers. To address the problems of the sericulture farmers, to protect their, as I am to protect the interests of the weavers, which I have addressed by reducing the import duty and making raw materials cheaper, availability of raw materials cheaper. I would like to address the problems of the sericulture farmers by working out a special package in consultation with the state governments and the central silk board, and I will come out as and when I can formulate it. Thank you, Madam.